It's just such a big part of the environment there.
Cool. Thanks. So yeah, one of the questions I had was, do you get a greater variety of birds? And I think you're saying yes on Monhegan, or is it that you just don't notice them more because it's quiet and easier to kind of notice them, or do you know, or is it in a spot that gets a big variety of birds?
Yeah, I mean it's on a sort of migration route, so birds, many species of bird are on their way through, heading north in the spring up to Canada. You know, and most of these migratory birds don't actually stop in Monhegan for more than a few days, so they arrive and then they're gone for the most part. And then they were heading back down south in September, heading down to South America or Mexico, wherever their final destination is. So it is sort of like an ornithological soap opera. You know, it's like, oh, who's here today? You know, and that's why you get these you know, large groups of birders coming out there, because you know, you can see all kinds of species of birds that you're really not going to see on the mainland, or you're less likely to encounter on the mainland. You know, it's sort of like the snowy owls arrive, I think in January, February. They eat all the muskrats and then they leave. You know, so it's like they come and go, and they're daytime owls, so you know they're very visible. They're big. They're quite dramatic. I don't know what other birds are there. It's like a lot of the birders are really into warblers. I think there's perhaps 40 species of warbler that pass through.
Wow.
Monhegan, and I don't recognize any of them. Although a couple of them, like there's a blue one and a bright green one, and I know, you know, black-throated blue warbler, black-throated green warbler. I would recognize one if I saw one. I've never seen them, unfortunately. There are tanagers, scarlet tanagers. There are orioles. There are indigo buntings, like almost tropical-looking birds. Well, I guess they kind of are tropical because they winter down in the northern part of South America and head north. I'm probably completely incorrect about that.
Sounds like you know what you're saying, so that's.
But yeah, you know, a lot of the birds look the same superficially, but are not. You know, so you need a careful observation. You know,
I would
like
just
the
add,
Cooper's hawk and the sharp-shinned hawk, to me, look exactly the same, but to a real birder, no, they're instantly recognizable and distinguishable.
I would also add too that there was that as far as noticing the birds on Monhegan, the fact is that most of us are just walking down the roads rather than driving around in the cars. So I think the fact that you're walking around on the roads, you're more likely to notice the birds around you than if you were, you know, driving around.
And I think that's something that it seems like right now with everyone staying home, a lot of people are sort of noticing birds more than if you're zooming off to work and back. And that's kind of one thing I've noticed is a little bit been nice being outside and just kind of taking a little more time to look around and see what's flying through the air. It's kind of cool. Are there other artists that you would recommend looking at, or that you really like that work, you know, that do work with birds, or other subjects as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just Dylan and myself that are doing it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, there's some fantastic landscape artists. There's wonderful figure, you know, Daphne Pulsifer. I'm sorry, is she here? Yes, she's wonderful figurative sculptor. You know, Susan Gilbert, wonderful landscape artist, plein air painter. You know, but you know, really, they're not doing the birds. And I wonder if it's something because, you know, in order to make our images of birds, we have to stylize them, both Dylan and myself.
Yeah.
You know, we sort of have to abstract them. We can't sort of render every feather. And so I think, you know, that lends itself more to, you know, a figure like a bird than, say, a landscape. You can render the landscape more realistically.
Yeah, as far as other artists go, I think there's too many to name for Monhegan artists because there's just such a
Yeah.
rich community, and the Lupin Gallery is great about showing a lot of contemporary Monhegan artists. But as far as artists that do birds that I'm really into, there's a guy, Charlie Harper, who isn't around anymore, but he had a long career of doing these very stylized, minimalist birds. He did a lot of nature stuff in general, but Charlie Harper is one of my biggest inspirations and biggest, one of my favorite artists. And then there's a contemporary painter who goes by the name of the Mincing Mockingbird. And he does some kind of realistic oil paintings of birds with some, and they're always titled with really like smart, funny titles, like, you know, commentary kind of titles. So those two, Charlie Harper and the Mincing Mockingbird, are good bird ones. I'm sure that there's probably some other great ones that I'm not thinking of right now, but those guys are great.
Cool. So were there any other questions in the comments that didn't get answered, or Lisa, do you want to hop on?
There are a few. Hi, everybody. This is Lisa, for those of you who don't know me, those of you who do. Hey. Yeah, a lot of cheering and, you know, comments about how great you both are, which I will agree with. I don't know if you, Dylan and Asher, can read through the comments, but there's some nice little comments about birds people have seen. So clearly you're inspiring people. And I think, as you said, Graham, yeah, people are probably a little more aware of birds. Some of the questions that were asked were answered, but I guess this one hasn't. Do either of you have a favorite bird, either aesthetically, like one that you like to do a lot, or based on their behaviors? This is a question from Claire.
Sure. For me, I love the red-winged blackbirds, which we see in the meadow in the middle of Monhegan, Monhegan's village. The red-winged blackbirds are just so striking to me. And the grackles are great. There's like a mean blue jay that sits on a tree outside our kitchen window that scares everyone else away that I really like. There's just so many, but the red-winged blackbird is probably my favorite. And I've done paper cuttings of them like maybe 2 or 3 times. I'd like to do some more. Asher?
Oh, for me, it has to be the great blue heron. I have some big posters I did. I think for a man who wanted a background for his Zoom meetings, I did some more copies. So yeah, the great blue heron, closely followed by the night heron, the black-capped night heron. I like herons. We see them here in the Philadelphia area. There's one we see, I don't know if it's the same heron, pretty much every day when we walk our dog, and then we see them in Monhegan when they pass through or visit. I always love seeing them. So yeah.
Good, thanks. This is another question for Asher. Do you intentionally reverse the images to get a certain composition orientation prior to cutting the lino? This is from Baker.
Oh, that's a really good question. I frequently forget to reverse the images, which is really awkward when I'm doing lettering. You know, and also like I sometimes forget to reverse the image when I'm doing the second color. So the first color and the second color are the wrong way around. But yes, I try to take into account reversing the image. But it's, you know, it's like one of those things is you can't completely predict how it's going to look. For me, the big issue is I've done some portraits, And you have to be really careful with portraits, because you can have an original sketch that looks exactly like the person you're doing it, and then it comes out as a print backwards and it looks nothing like the person. So yeah, I would say portraits are like the hardest thing to do for printmakers. But yeah, reversing is a big thing, and I often forget to do it.
I can attest to that. I've seen.
You hear the curses from my studio.
Yes. And Asher and I had to go use our computers in separate rooms in our house because we were creating a lot of weird feedback. So that's why I'm in one room, he's in another. I don't know if this is a question for Asher or Diller, from Steve and Kathy. What do you see as the difference between a photo and your rendition? I'm guessing that's more for Asher.
Well, a photo, I mean, a photo that is like a real work of art in its own right. I mean, I'm not going to improve on that. But with my own pictures, I often, like, for instance, I did the Screech Owls, the blue one in the show, the 2 Screech Owls, and that was like a combination of photos that I actually took of a captive screech owl at the Eagle Fest down in South Jersey. That was like a little screech owl perched on a perch, I guess. And I looked at it and I kind of studied it and took some photos and sort of combined everything to make my images of the screech owls. So, and I think I tried screech owls before, just from photos and just from, other people's drawings, really, that I picked up on the internet. And it really, I felt like the first time I really saw a screech owl enough to make a piece of art from it was at the Eagle Fest, when there was one a few feet in front of me. Mostly I try to make prints of birds that I've actually seen in the wild. Occasionally captive. I mean, the screech owl sort of wasn't really in the wild, it was captive. But I do a lot of herons. I see a lot of herons. I didn't do a night heron until I saw a night heron. I did a minor bird after a minor bird pecked away some of my finger in a wildlife reserve in South America. But I did get a chance to look at it very carefully while it was jabbing its beak into my hand. So yeah, there's a big difference between art and photos, but photos can be helpful. Like if I want to get the details of markings. I don't think of my prints yet as being, zoologically accurate. But I'm trying to get them as accurate as possible. Like there's a specific number of primary feathers that define a particular species. Is it 9?